Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hanif Brohi, and my father's name is Muhammad Aslam Brohi, and I am the student of BS English Language and Literature, Sindh University Campus Larkana. Here I have made slides of my four topics of my subject Introduction to Literature, and I am going to express these topics one by one, and I'm sure you will be just satisfied the way I have expressed my topics. Number 1, Introduction to Literature. Literature is an art of writing meant to give aesthetic flair, and it shows the true picture of life, also influences the masses. Now here an important question arises: why do we study a literature? We study While studying the literature, we will be able to know that literature deals with life and its facts. There is no literature without imagination. Literature is a thought. Literature is an expression of life, and language is its medium. All the major languages have their own literature. Number second, it is full of human interest, evaluated with the coloring of imagination and thoughts. Here it means that what humans are interested in and the things that a human does. The poets are really focused in imagination when it comes to the poetry. They always write the kind of poetry in which they are interested in. Literature teaches us humanity and makes us human. At the end of the day, we can express literature in our own words, and it is: literature is basically an imaginative way of reflecting the basic and hidden truths of life in a written way. It means whatever we read in literature, that is all in written form. So here I have another definition of literature, and I haven't written it in my slides, but I can I can I can say it to you. Literature holds a mirror up to life, or is a true model of life. Another definition that I have is: literature is an art of it is replicated with artistic embellishment. The another definition that I have is: literature is based on the law of nature. It is an expression of life and imagination. I have another definition of literature, and it is: literature is a term used to describe written and sometimes spoken material, derived from the Latin litera, meaning writing formed with letters. Literature most commonly refers to works of the creative imagination, including poetry, drama, fiction, non-fiction, journalism, and in some instances means song. Well, I would say it it is difficult to precisely define, though many have tried, but it is clear that the accepted definition of literature is constantly changing and evolving. So, well, that was all about my topic. Literature means what really literature is. Well, my second topic is poetry. Let me explain the poetry for you. Poetry is the way of sharing our strong emotions and feelings. Also, according to William Wordsworth, poetry is an intense overflow of emotions and feelings that a person possesses. There are two basic types of poetry. One is objective poetry. In objective poetry, the poet doesn't express his personal liking and disliking, and his poetry treats the subject of matter from outside of the poet's mind. Overall, we will say that in objective poetry, the poet will not express his personality, but he will express the truth and realities of life. Note: objective poetry is not personal, it is not concerned with the poet's personal activities. Subjective poetry, the second type of the poetry. Subjective poetry, it is kind of poetry which is purely concerned with the poet. When a poet writes a poetry with the subject drawn by his own self, overall we can say that in subjective poetry the poet expresses his own personality. He will not express the truth or realities of life. Well, I have some other definitions of the poetry, and I'm going to explain them one by one. Poetry is metrical composition, the art of uniting player with truth by calling imagination to help reason. According to the Ruskin, a poet, he said that poetry is the suggestion by the imagination of noble grounds for noble imagination of noble grounds for noble emotions. Also, there is another definition of the poetry, and it is: poetry is a form of literature that uses aesthetic and rhythmic qualities of language, such as phonetics, sound symbolism, and meter, to evoke meanings in addition to or in place of the prosaic ostensible meaning. According to Robert Frost, poetry is when an emotion has found its thought and the thought has found words. Okay, now I'm moving towards third topic, and that is national literature. National literature has been the most important topic of my semester. National literature is something that deals with, exhibits themes and morals of ruling ideology of that nation. Through national literature, we get to know the customs, lifestyle, and cultural values of a specific nation. For example, we have always seen groupings when it comes to the language. Literature in English is a common one that brings all literature written in English English in its boundary. It is the regardless of the citizenship of the author. Now here, I have a subtopic, and that is importance of literature. National literature is relevant in the 21st century because it includes formulation of a distinct American identity through the development of literary characters and detailed setting, and it allows the truth of the nation to become more transparent uh, through the use of plot and theme development. My last topic is criticism. Criticism in literature, criticism is about discussions, evaluation, and interpretation of literature. Literary criticism asks what actually literature is, what it does, and what it is worth. Criticism tells us tells us about what kind of literature we are studying. Criticism tells us the basic functions of literature. By studying the criticism, we get to know what is actual worth of the literature. By the studying of criticism, we will be in a position to recognize the relationship between authors, readers, and texts. The acts of literary criticism increases the enjoyment of our literary work. There are two major functions of literary criticism. Number one, to examine and evaluate works of literature, to form general principles for the examination of the works of literature. So, thank you so much. That was all about my presentation of introduction to literature.